There's a photo sitting on my phone right now that I almost deleted. Not because it was blurry, not because the lighting was bad, because of my smile. I looked at it and thought, is that really what I look like? And the honest answer was yes. That was the moment I realized something had been changing for a long time, right under my nose, and I had completely missed it. Now here's what's strange. I'd been brushing twice a day, using whitening toothpaste, even tried those expensive strips from the pharmacy, and yet, there it was, that dull, yellowish tint that seemed to make me look, I don't know, older, tired, like my face was carrying more years than I actually had. If you've ever looked in the mirror and thought something similar, I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes, because what I found, completely by accident, is not what you'd expect. It's not a new product. It's not an expensive dental procedure. It's not even something most people talk about openly. But once you understand why it works, you'll wonder why no one ever told you this before. Let me ask you something honest. When someone pulls out a camera at a family gathering, a birthday, a casual lunch with friends, what's your first instinct? Do you smile freely? Or do you hesitate? Maybe just for half a second. Maybe you adjust your lips slightly, keep it a little more closed than it used to be. You might not even consciously realize you're doing it, but it's there. That tiny pause before the smile. And here's what nobody tells you. That pause has a name. Psychologists call it smile suppression. And it's far more common than most people admit, especially for adults in their 50s and 60s. It's not vanity. It's not being dramatic. It's a deeply human response to something that feels off. Something that, over time, starts to affect more than just photos. Because when your smile changes, something else changes with it. The way you carry yourself in a room. The way you feel when you're introduced to someone new. Whether you laugh with your mouth open or keep it contained. Whether you lean in or pull back. These are small things, but they compound over time, and most people trace them back to one moment, a mirror, a photo, a video, where they saw something they didn't recognize. That yellowing, that dull surface, that feeling of this doesn't match who I feel like inside. And the most frustrating part, it's not your fault. Not really. After 50, the chemistry inside your teeth changes. The outer layer, enamel, naturally becomes more porous, more absorbent. Coffee, tea, red wine, even some fruits and vegetables, they penetrate differently than they did at 35. It's biology, it's time, and it's invisible while it's happening. You don't notice it day by day. You notice it all at once, in a photo you almost deleted. Now here's what surprised me most, and this is the part most people never find out. The reason most whitening products don't work, and I mean really don't work long term, has nothing to do with the strength of the formula. It has to do with what they're actually targeting. Most whitening toothpastes and strips are designed to work on the surface of the tooth, the outermost layer, and yes, they can lift some staining there, temporarily. But here's the thing. The color change that happens naturally after 50 isn't just surface staining. It goes deeper. Over time, a substance inside the tooth, called dentin, begins to show through the enamel more prominently. Dentin is naturally yellowish, and as enamel thins or becomes more translucent with age, that yellow starts to dominate what you see in the mirror. No whitening strip reaches that layer. No whitening toothpaste addresses that mechanism, which is why you brush and rinse and try the strips for 2 weeks, and then wonder why you're still looking at the same smile. This isn't marketing talk. This is dentistry that most people simply never hear about in a casual conversation. And once I understood this, a lot of things started to fall into place. Because if the mechanism is different, then the solution has to be different too. Let me explain this without making it feel like a science class, because it really doesn't need to be complicated. Think of your tooth like a layered structure. The outside is hard enamel. That's the protective shell. Just below that is dentin, softer, naturally more yellow. And what surrounds all of it is a thin film of accumulated residue, minerals, organic compounds, microscopic particles from everything you've consumed over decades. Now, enamel is porous, like a very fine sponge. Every time you drink coffee, that liquid passes through tiny channels in the enamel and deposits color molecules inside those channels. They don't just sit on top, they embed. And they accumulate layer by layer over months and years. The reason this matters? Scrubbing the surface doesn't reach what's inside those channels. What you actually need is something that draws those embedded particles out. Gently, consistently, without damaging the enamel that's already become more vulnerable with age. And this is exactly where that strange remedy I mentioned at the beginning comes in. I say strange because it doesn't look like a whitening product. It doesn't come in a shiny box with a smiling model on the front. It doesn't promise miracles in 15 minutes. It's simpler than that. A specific combination, used at a very specific time of day, that works with the natural biology of the tooth rather than against it. The key principle is this. At night, when saliva production slows down, the tooth surface becomes more receptive. More open, in a sense, and that's the window. That's when certain natural compounds applied correctly can begin drawing out what's accumulated over time, not stripping the enamel, not bleaching, drawing out. It's a gentler process. It takes longer than a chemical bleach, but what it produces is different. A brightness that looks natural, not artificial, because it is natural. And the consistency, that's the part people underestimate. Most of us have been trained to expect instant results. We put on a patch, we rinse with a special mouthwash, and we check the mirror the next morning. When nothing dramatic happened, we give up. But your teeth didn't yellow overnight, and they won't brighten overnight either. What this method gives you is something better than overnight results. It gives you lasting ones. Here's the mistake I see people make over and over, and I made it too, for years. We assume that if a product is marketed as whitening, it must be doing something meaningful for whitening. The word is everywhere. Whitening toothpaste, whitening mouthwash, whitening strips, whitening pens, whitening kits, and the marketing is very convincing. But here's a hard truth. Most of those products are approved to make a cosmetic difference, not a structural one. They polish the surface. They remove the very top layer of surface staining, and yes, your teeth might look slightly brighter for a few days. But they don't address what's underneath. They don't work with your enamel. They often work against it. Some abrasive whitening toothpastes, used consistently over months, actually thin the enamel, which makes the dentin underneath more visible, which makes the yellowing worse. This is the cycle nobody talks about. You buy the whitening toothpaste because your teeth look yellow. You use it for 3 months. The surface gets polished. You feel okay for a week, then the color comes back, sometimes more noticeable than before, because the enamel is now slightly more worn. So you buy a stronger product. And the cycle continues. The problem isn't your discipline. It's not that you missed a step or didn't follow the instructions. The problem is that you were using a tool designed for a different job, like trying to remove a stain from fabric with sandpaper. Sure, the stain might look lighter for a moment, but you're also damaging what's underneath. Understanding this is the first step to actually changing something. And the second step? Realizing that what actually works has probably been sitting closer than you think. There's a simple test I want you to try. Right now, if you can. Find a good light source. Natural light is best. By a window in the morning. Look at your teeth in the mirror, not your whole smile. Just the teeth. The front 4 or 6. Now look at the edge of each tooth. The very tip where the enamel is thinnest. Do you see a slightly different shade there? More transparent? Or slightly grayish? That's called enamel translucency. and it's one of the earliest visible signs that the enamel has begun to thin. When that happens, light passes through the tooth differently. Instead of reflecting bright white, it absorbs and scatters. The tooth looks dull, shadowy, even when it's been freshly brushed. Now look at the body of the tooth. The broad surface, just above the gum line. Is the color uniform? Or is there a warmer, more yellowish hue that seems to come from within the tooth rather than sitting on the surface? If you see that warm inner glow, that's the dentin showing through. These two things together, translucent edges and warm inner color, are what dentists call age-related discoloration, and it's completely normal. It happens to nearly everyone after 50, but normal doesn't mean it has to stay that way, because once you know what you're looking at, you can begin addressing the actual mechanism, not just the symptom. And here's where things get genuinely interesting, because the same biology that causes this kind of discoloration also gives us a very specific window to work with. I want to be straightforward with you, because I think you deserve that. This isn't a health emergency. Yellowed teeth won't hurt you. They won't cause pain or illness, but they do something else, quietly and consistently, that I think is worth taking seriously. They change the story your face tells. Human beings read faces. Constantly, involuntarily. We assess health, energy, age, and vitality in fractions of a second. And teeth are a significant part of that signal. Research from social psychology, and this has been replicated multiple times, shows that teeth brightness affects perceived age more than almost any other facial feature. More than wrinkles. More than gray hair. More than skin tone. People with brighter teeth are consistently rated as years younger than their actual age. And the reverse is also true. Which means, and this is the part that feels uncomfortable to say out loud, your smile might be adding years to how others perceive you. Not because you're not taking care of yourself, but because a biological process you never asked for has been quietly changing things. And here's where progression matters, because this process doesn't pause. Every morning, cup of coffee. Every evening, glass of wine. Every cup of chamomile tea you drink because it helps you sleep. Every single one of those compounds is working its way into those microscopic channels in your enamel. Not dramatically, not visibly, day by day, but cumulatively. Over 6 months, over a year, the difference becomes measurable. And the longer it goes unaddressed, the more embedded those pigments become. The deeper into the enamel channels they settle, and the harder they are to draw out. This isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to help you understand timing. Starting something simple now, even something that only takes 3 or 4 minutes before bed, creates a very different outcome than waiting another year and wondering why the problem feels harder to address. Small, consistent actions, taken now, with the right understanding. That's all this requires. Now, the part you've been waiting for. What's this method exactly? I want to be careful here, because I'm not a dentist. I'm not making medical claims. What I'm sharing is based on my own experience, my own research, and conversations I've had with people who've gone through the same frustration cycle I described. But here's the core of it. The method uses 2 principles working together. Principle 1, timing. The best window to work on tooth discoloration is at night, specifically in the hour after your last meal, before sleep. Here's why. Saliva production drops significantly during the night. Saliva acts as a natural buffer, washing compounds away from the tooth surface. Less saliva means the surface is more open and receptive. Most people apply whitening products in the morning. That's actually the worst time. Your mouth is actively producing saliva, your enamel is freshly stimulated from food and drink, and the active compounds in whitening products get diluted and swept away within minutes. Flip the timing. Apply the right compounds at night, and you're working with your biology instead of against it. Principle 2, the right combination. Here's where the strange part comes in. The combination I'm referring to doesn't look like a whitening product. It involves natural compounds, things you might already have, used in a specific sequence. The first is an oil. Not any oil. A specific one with a long chain of medium-weight saturated fatty acids that have a documented ability to bind to lipophilic, fat-soluble residues in the tooth's microscopic channels. These residues are part of what traps pigment particles inside the enamel. When this oil is worked through the teeth, gently for a few minutes, it begins to pull those residues out of the channels. Think of it like drawing a magnet through iron filings. This practice, by the way, is not new. It's been used in Ayurvedic medicine for over 3,000 years. Western dentistry has started studying it more carefully, and while research is still limited, early findings on its effects on surface biofilm and staining are genuinely interesting. The second element is a mild alkaline compound, something that shifts the pH of the mouth just enough to help break the bond between pigment molecules and enamel channels. These two things together, used consistently at night before sleep, create the conditions for gradual natural brightening. Not overnight, over days and weeks, but visibly and without damaging the enamel that you need to protect as you get older. The reason I call it strange isn't because it's bizarre or experimental. It's because it doesn't fit the commercial template of what whitening is supposed to look like. It doesn't come in a fancy box. It doesn't promise results in 15 minutes. It doesn't strip your enamel down to get temporary brightness. It's quiet, it's consistent, and for a lot of people who had completely given up on ever seeing a change, it's the thing that actually worked. I've been sharing pieces of this with people close to me for a while now. A neighbor of mine, 61 years old, retired teacher. She'd stopped smiling with her teeth open in photos completely. Said she just didn't like how they looked. Tried the strips twice. Both times the sensitivity was so bad she had to stop. She started this method 6 weeks ago. Small, consistent changes. Nightly. 3 to 4 minutes. She texted me a photo last month, full smile, teeth showing, and said, "I don't know what you gave me, but I actually like this photo." She's not alone. I've heard similar things from people in their late 50s and early 60s who had resigned themselves to the idea that this was just what aging looked like, that there was nothing they could do without spending thousands of dollars at a dental office. And here's what I've noticed in every single one of those conversations. The change isn't just in the mirror. When someone starts feeling good about their smile again, really good, naturally, something shifts. They laugh more openly. They hold eye contact longer. They lean into conversations instead of pulling back. It sounds like I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. The smile was never just about the teeth. It was always about the freedom behind it. That freedom is what people are getting back. And I want to make sure you have everything you need to try this for yourself. Correctly, consistently, in the right order, and at the right time. Without guessing or having to piece it together from scattered information online. So here's what I've done. I put together a simple, practical guide, step by step, that explains exactly how this method works. The specific compounds, the timing, the sequence, and the common mistakes to avoid. It's not complicated. You could read through it in about 10 minutes, and then you'd have everything you need to start tonight, if you wanted to. I've left the link in the description. It's the first thing you'll see when you scroll down. Just a clear, detailed walkthrough with no upsells, no pressure, no subscription. If this resonates with you, if any part of what I described sounds familiar, it's worth a look. And I've also pinned it in the comments, because I know a lot of folks watching on a TV aren't always reaching for the description right away. Just scroll to the first pinned comment. It's all there. I'll say this clearly. I'm not promising miracles. I'm not telling you this will work for everyone in exactly the same way. What I am telling you is this. If you've tried the commercial options and felt that cycle of hope and disappointment, If you've started adjusting how you smile without fully realizing it, if you looked in the mirror recently and thought something needs to change, but you weren't sure what or how, then this is for you. Not because it's magic, but because it's finally the right approach for the right mechanism. And sometimes that makes all the difference. I want to come back to something I said at the beginning, about that photo I almost deleted, because I think there's something important there that I didn't fully unpack. When I looked at that photo, the immediate reaction was about the teeth, the color, the appearance. But the feeling underneath, the one that made me want to delete it, wasn't really about aesthetics. It was about recognition. I didn't recognize myself. Or more precisely, what I saw in that photo didn't match who I felt like on the inside. There was a mismatch. And that mismatch was uncomfortable in a way that's hard to explain unless you felt it yourself. After 55, that experience becomes more common. The body changes. Slowly, mostly invisibly, and then all at once in a photo, a video, a reflection caught off guard in a shop window. And we have two choices when that happens. We can dismiss it, tell ourselves it's just vanity, that we shouldn't care, that aging is natural and we should just accept it. Or we can do something about the specific things that are actually within our control. I believe very strongly in that second option. Not because of ego, not because of youth worship, but because taking care of how we look, intentionally, practically, is connected to how we feel. It's connected to our energy, our confidence, our willingness to engage with life. The smile is one of the most powerful expressions a human being has. Not just biologically, though it releases endorphins, reduces cortisol, calms the nervous system, but socially, emotionally. When you smile freely, you invite people in. You signal openness. You communicate something about your inner state that words can't quite capture. And when that freedom is inhibited, even slightly, even just that half-second pause before the photo, it costs something. Small, invisible, daily costs that add up. So no, this isn't about chasing some impossible standard. It's not about trying to look 35 when you're 62. It's about looking as good as you actually are, as good as you feel. And your smile is a huge part of that equation. Now let me add one more layer to the science, because I think this part is genuinely fascinating, and most people never hear it. There's a concept in dentistry called the light scattering index of a tooth. It refers to how light bounces off and through the tooth surface. A healthy, well-hydrated, bright tooth scatters light in a way that looks luminous. Not just white, luminous. There's a warmth and depth to it, like it's lit from within. A dull, discolored tooth absorbs light. It looks flat, heavy. The surface seems to sit on the face rather than radiate outward. This difference, scattering versus absorbing, is actually what your brain registers when it perceives someone as vibrant or tired. It's not just color. It's the way light interacts with the surface. The compounds I mentioned earlier, the oil and the mild alkaline element, both work on this level. The oil removes the biofilm and residue that causes light to scatter poorly. The alkaline compound helps restore the surface pH balance that affects how the tooth interacts with light. Together, they don't just change the color, they change the quality of light the tooth reflects. That's why the result looks natural rather than artificially white. Because it's not adding artificial brightness, it's restoring the tooth's own reflective quality. This distinction matters a lot, because teeth that are chemically bleached often look correct in isolation, but slightly off in context. There's a hardness to them that doesn't quite match the rest of the face. What you want, especially at this stage of life, is a brightness that belongs to you, that looks like you, just more rested, more vital, more like what you feel on the inside. That here's where I want to leave you. This isn't a complicated story. Someone noticed a change, went looking for a real answer, found something that didn't fit the commercial template, but actually made sense, used it consistently, And gradually, not overnight, but genuinely, something shifted. The smile became easier. The pause before the photo disappeared. The laugh stayed a little more open, a little longer. And the ripple from that? More presence in conversations, more ease in new situations, a quiet confidence that doesn't announce itself but is felt by you and by the people around you. That's the real outcome. Not just brighter teeth, though yes, that's real and visible, but what lives underneath the brighter teeth, the freedom to be fully yourself in moments that matter. A family dinner, a reunion photo you'll look at for years, a video call with grandkids, a first impression at a class, a club, a community you're just beginning to explore. These are not small moments. They are, in many ways, the moments that life is made of. And your smile belongs in all of them. Fully. Without hesitation. Without that quiet internal calculation of how wide to open, how long to hold it, what angle is most forgiving. Just free. That's what I want for you. And if you're ready to take the first step, or even just to understand more before deciding, the guide in the description is a good place to start. First link below, or the pinned comment if that's easier. Read it, try it, give it a few weeks, and see what your smile looks like then. One last thing, if this kind of content is useful to you, if you appreciate someone going beyond the surface and actually explaining the why behind what works, then I'd love for you to subscribe, because this is what we do here. We look at the things that affect daily life as we get older, not with alarm, not with despair, but with curiosity and practical focus. Sleep, energy, confidence, skin, vision, teeth. The things nobody hands you a manual for. We figure them out together. Hit subscribe and I'll see you in the next video. What this method is designed to produce.